All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another live stream. Today's going to be a little bit of a special one because we are not necessarily focusing on anything like directly AI related. I guess we are going to cover something that's somewhat AI related, just in the sense of using GitHub Copilot, which we'll get to in a little bit. But we are not necessarily going to do anything like super strong coding wise per se today. Today was just a little bit more of a fun kind of one for me. It's just me nerding out a little bit, and I thought you all might appreciate this as well. So just for a little bit of context, even though I do have my own personal MacBook, and that's how I'm streaming, this is how we're streaming right now, is using my own personal MacBook, I actually prefer to do most of my personal coding work on an iPad. And I think you may have heard me talk about this in other streams, and I even just wrote a whole blog post about this the other day. But I just really like the form factor of the iPad. The disappointing thing about the iPad is that it is not a perfect device, especially in terms of compute. And it's quite disappointing actually, because so like the iPad that I currently have. So I'm gonna try to share it here. So this is my current iPad. This is the latest generation M4 iPad with the M4 iPad, 13-inch with the newer Magic Keyboard here. And as you can kind of see, like Apple has really taken steps to make this thing, this device, come a long way to being like a fully fledged laptop. So I can do 95% of the stuff that I need to do on the iPad. So I do like my graphic design work, I do like the blog writing, and then other things on here. The unfortunate downside about this device is iPad OS is really hindered in terms of like what you can do with code. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and jump onto the screen here. Here, let me go ahead and move that here. So we are actually, this is my iPad here. I am reflecting the screen of my iPad up onto my Mac, so then you all can see it here. So you can see I'm swiping around here. This is the interface that I look at. In terms of code, you can do extremely little on the iPad, and it is just because Apple has chosen to make these decisions with iPad OS. Like I said, there is the M4 chip in here, which I imagine that next week we will, or maybe in October, we will hear about the new MacBook Airs and the new MacBook Pros with this new chip. And you can still do things like Final Cut Pro or some of the Apple's like native apps on here, but coding remains the largest barrier. And it's disappointing because I really love the interface, because I love swiping around here. It's now got an extendable display. I love putting Windows side by side on this device, and I just love how bright the screen is, just because I love to like code outside. And so like the MacBook screen as of today is still just not bright enough to like code in direct sunlight, but with this newer iPad you can. So anyway, you didn't come here for the iPad. You came here for something else. So let's talk about what that is. So in order for me to get around my issues, I have to have a little bit of a unique setup. And the cool thing about this setup is that like it's really beginner friendly, I would say. I'm going to try to keep it as beginner friendly as possible. But the great thing about what we're going to be showing today is basically if you have an internet connection, you can have a fully fledged development workstation right now. And so so let me just slide over here for a little bit. So we are back on my Mac just right now just to show this. So this is VS Code. We've been in here before. You've seen me code out of here before. I really love VS Code. It is one of the more popular integrated development environments on the planet. So and so I really like the interface. And then more recently, you are probably aware that GitHub has launched the AI coding assistant known as GitHub Copilot. And so GitHub Copilot is very nice in the sense that like it can help you with coding assistant sort of thing. So if so I'm just here on my Mac. I hope I have it activated right now. So I'm going to say add a Terraform block that builds a simple IAM policy that grants access just to AWS S3. So, and then whenever I type that in, you can see right then and there that it just does all this for me. So I really like this setup. And so I spent my last weekend just trying to see, okay, how can I get this setup that I have really nice going on my computer onto my iPad? And that's what I'm here to show you today. So let's go back to my iPad, and we're going to do as much as we can on the iPad here just to show you. It doesn't matter if it's an iPad. You could be on a Chromebook, you could be on a standard Windows laptop, you could be on an Android tablet. Technically speaking, you could be on an iPhone. I definitely would not recommend that. As you can imagine, the screen real estate is just not there. But yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into things here. So the way that we get going here is we first go to github.com. Now I'm already on github.com. So I'm already logged in. If you are not familiar with what GitHub is, so let's take a step back if you're one of our newer folks here. So GitHub is largely like a place where people can push and maintain their code. Now, it's not the only platform out there. There are other platforms out there like GitLab, etc. that are, so the thing to keep in mind if you're not familiar with Git, so Git is like a service, an open source service that helps you to manage your code, like version control your code. So that's Git. And Git is totally separate from GitHub. GitHub is the platform that is technically owned by Microsoft for where you can push things up and maintain your code and do other sorts of things as well. So in order to use GitHub, you can have a free account. There is a pro version. You do not need the pro version for this. I will say when we get to it, if you did want to use GitHub Copilot, you would have to pay, excuse me, that subscription fee, which is, I believe, $10 a month right now. And but like you can get a free trial as well. So if you're not, if you're still kind of new, you're dipping your toe in the water, you're not sure, I would suggest starting off with the free tier and or the free trial as well. Okay, so like I said, so when you log in, you will see some sort of screen like this. You'll have to do a sign up process, of course, relatively simple and straightforward, just like you sign up for Facebook or whatever. And so you can see we have my repositories in here. So I got a number of different repositories of things that I've been working on, projects that we've been working on together. So here's let me get this cursor out of the way. Just FYI, in case you are wondering, so the iPad actually does not use a standard cursor. It uses this little circle that I'm kind of moving around. I hope you can see that. And so then when you go over text, it actually changes into like a vertical bar. But anyway, so this is the standard GitHub interface. So let's talk about Codespaces and what are Codespaces. So Codespaces is basically a virtual environment where you can do your work. Or let me rephrase that. It's a cloud environment where you can do your work. So basically, and there's like a free tier version and like a higher tier paid version of it. We're just going to cover the free version, and I've personally found that the free version works perfectly great for me. There is a quota limit, and we'll talk about the quota limit here in a little bit, and I'll show you how you can manage your quota and whatnot. But basically, like imagine that. If you're familiar with AWS, for example, or you've studied for like the AWS Cloud Practitioner exam, you may have come across something called Elastic Compute 2 or EC2, which are these compute instances that AWS offers. So those are all paid and stuff. But like, what the really cool thing about GitHub Codespaces, and I'm not even sure when it launched. I'm going to guess it was relatively recently because I've only recently learned about it myself. So, and watching YouTube videos, like it only goes back like a year. But anyway, so imagine like basically, so if you're not familiar, Microsoft has their own version of a cloud. It's called Microsoft Azure. So I would imagine on the back end of this, GitHub Codespaces are being powered by Microsoft Azure. But yeah, enough chatting. Let's just get into one, and you can kind of see immediately where I'm going with this. And again, I just want to show one more time really quick. Coming back over here. So this is GitHub this is just VS Code. So this is the standard integrated development environment that a lot of developers use out there. I really like VS Code. It's got a lot of nice little handy things, and it's got GitHub Copilot. So let's go ahead and open up our first code space. So the way that we get to code spaces is you can see this, what they call hamburger menu up in the top left here. And then so we'll go ahead and toggle that open. And then if we go down here, you can see code spaces. Now apparently I do have a code space already that I had created. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. So as you can see, so this is probably what you'll see when you first get in here. You're going to have nothing in here, and then you'll see a couple of different templates that you can use. So I am just going to use a standard quick template. Or actually, you know what? I'm going to go to a new code space here. or maybe not. I want to go back here. I'm going to use this blank template here, but you can use any of these other templates. If you are new to coding or anything like that, I would not necessarily steer you towards anything like this. And in fact, actually, one thing before we get into anything, if you are brand new to coding and you're interested in learning Python specifically, I would actually recommend more so Kaggle notebooks. And so let's go over to Kaggle. Like I've shown Kaggle notebooks before. So just out of just to be clear on what Kaggle notebooks are. So Kaggle is a data science competition platform where people can compete across various data science sorts of things. But the two other things that I really like about Kaggle is, number one, it's got these courses here. So these are free courses. They're shorter courses. So these are really nice little things. Like if you are wanting to learn about Python and whatnot. So and the great thing about this is, so like if we jump into here and you want to like do this Hello Python exercise here, it will open up this environment for you that you can go ahead and do your work. So if you are brand new to coding and you want to learn Python, I would actually probably recommend these courses out here, just given that like it's so simple to get up and going with this. Like there is nothing like I do have a workstation setup guide if you do want to set up your own personal MacBook or your own personal Windows machine as if you are a developer. But if you're brand new, that can be a little bit daunting. So if you want to kind of just go into something that's already good to go, I would recommend coming out here to GitHub, or I'm sorry, Kaggle. And again, Kaggle is free. It does have a quota thing as well, but I've never hit that quota myself as long as you're not using like higher compute instances like GPUs or anything like that. So let's get out of Kaggle though. We didn't deviating a little bit here. So let's get back into GitHub Codespaces and why I personally like them better. Because and you'll see why here. So we're starting up a new template here. Now, what does this look like now that we've loaded this up here? Well, it should look very familiar to you. So let me close out a couple of these windows here. So again, this is my personal. We're back on my Mac right now, just to demonstrate here. This is VS Code. This is pretty much the whole VS Code within. It's running in the cloud. So I am running it on my iPad here, but my iPad is connected to the internet. But basically, this is the entirety of VS Code here, and that's why I really like this. So let's say, so if I wanted to, start a new, I'm going to start a new directory in here. I'm going to call notebooks, and then within notebooks, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a new Jupyter Notebook test.ipynb. In case you're curious, that file extension ipynb. So Jupyter Notebooks. Well, let me take a step back. Jupyter Notebooks, if you are not familiar with them, is a way for data scientists and other machine learning engineers to write their Python or R-based code in a way that like you can actually have what they call markdown cells, and it's basically a way to describe what your code is doing as you're kind of going along. And so like here, let me just pop back into another one of these. So like here's an example. So I've got markdown cells up here that's describing here's what I'm doing, here's my actual code that's running, and here's more markdown cells, whatnot. Now, to be clear, Jupyter Notebooks should not be used in a production setting. These are really more so designed for what they call discovery. And so in the data science world, discovery is this idea where if we're trying to build a predictive model for the first time and we're not necessarily sure how we want to go about things, then we might load the data up and do like exploratory data analysis within a Jupyter Notebook, and to like kind of visualize the data, etc., and might make notes about the data as you kind of go. I personally love to use Jupyter Notebooks also as a learning tool, and you've seen me use them in previous streams if you've been on previous streams before. So let's come back to here. So as you can see, the nice thing about GitHub GitHub Codespaces here is it has synced all of my settings from my local workstation up to here. Now, and that doesn't matter if this is the first time you've been in like GitHub Codespaces. It doesn't matter if you've never been on VS Code before. So yeah, you might. So I use this special theme, like this colorized theme called what is it called? OneDark Pro. So yours might look a little bit different just in the terms of color scheme, but the layout's all going to be the same. By the way, I am taking questions on LinkedIn or YouTube. If you are watching on either of those platforms, feel free to drop them in the chat. There is about a 30-second lag, but I'm happy to answer anything. Anyway, so back to our Jupyter notebook here. Oh, that's what I was starting to say. So why do we call it why is the file extension called .ipynb? That is because Jupyter notebooks used to be called IPy notebooks. There you go. So IPY notebook NB. So, all right. So if I wanted to, the first things first, I need to select my kernel. Don't worry about this too much. So a lot of this is already kind of set up for you, good to go. And then I'm going to show you a couple additional settings that are a little tiny bit more advanced. But for those of you folks out there who are watching this and want some of those advanced things, we'll cover those a little bit later on. So I'm going to go ahead in here, and I'm going to convert this into a markdown cell, and I'm going to say, hello, this is a test of a Jupyter notebook. And then, so yeah, there's a markdown cell right there, and I'm going to convert this back into a Python cell. So let's say, so if you notice something in here, you'll notice that the grade text, and I hope this is big enough for y'all, that the grade text here is saying press Command I to ask GitHub Copilot to do something. Okay, so on my iPad here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Command I, and I'm going to say create a random number generator, have it pick a number between 1 and 1,000. But only odd numbers. No, wait, no, only prime numbers. Let's throw it a curveball. Prime numbers. So prime numbers being like 1, 2. No, is 2 a prime number? I think 2 is a prime number. 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. Why am I trying to do my primes out loud? All right. So anyway, but you can see here, I am doing this all directly on the iPad. And so you can see it is generating the code. And let me zoom out for y'all here since I zoomed in. Oh, what? So you're seeing a little bit of a gotcha here where like sometimes it doesn't want to, like the zooming is kind of funky. Maybe I got to refresh. Hold on. I might need to refresh. All right, no more zooming. So you're seeing a couple little gotchas, but again, I prefer to work this way just because it's easy. Like I just like working this way. I don't know, I'm weird. Okay, let me just get out of here and go back in. All right, so I should just be able to refresh, and then you can see, for some reason, whenever you create a new GitHub Codespace, it gives it like a random name. So you could see here, it's like it just gave it Bookish Invention. I've gotten other random names before, but don't worry about that too much. So let me get back into here, and hopefully it won't be all zoomed in. All right, so it'll take a second to load back up here. And it's generally pretty quick. Like, I'm actually kind of surprised it's not loaded up already. But yeah, and then the nice thing, of course, is from this particular interface, you can push your code back into the standard GitHub and then pull that code down onto your local machine and then continue to work on your local machine as if without the internet or whatever. Why is this taking so long to set up? All right, hold on, let me refresh again. Sometimes there is a little bit of a hiccup with these GitHub Codespaces. I'm getting a little bit irritated. Oh, okay, here we go. All right, so this is the code that we had written before. Apologize if that's a little bit small to read, but if I go ahead and run this cell here, this Jupyter Notebook cell, you will see that it did produce a random number, a random prime number. So it produced the number 7 there. Okay, I am going to zoom in. I'm going to regret this, but I'm going to zoom in for your benefit. So you can see when I run this code, bam, 953, 157. All right, and then we can continue to do other sorts of things. So if I want to say, here, yeah, I knew I was going to regret this. Okay, let's see if I can unzoom. Okay, so doing things on the iPad is imperfect, but like I said, this whole GitHub Codespaces thing that I'm doing right now, you can do it on a standard Windows machine or anything, and you probably wouldn't have the same issues that I'm having. It's just that it's being funky because it's the iPad. All right, so let me go back in here again. Okay. Yeah, but I mean, as you can see though, this really is just VS Code in the cloud. And so you could see, all right, we got my notebook back. And so if I go in here and I hit Command I, so Command I is the hotkey for enabling GitHub Copilot. So I can say, well, let me just ask this. Let me ask this here. So if I highlight all this text and I go to Command K, or I'm sorry, Command I. I'm used to Command K because that's what cursors is, the cursor IDE, which that, yeah. But anyway, Command I. Tell me. Oh wait. No, I'm gonna say annotate this code with comments. Please ensure the comments start with a verb that ends with ing. Okay, so we're gonna have it annotate. It's going back through this code and it's refactoring it and adding comments. So you can see that it added checks if the number is a prime, generate a prime number. But it did not take my. Let me try to refresh that. I don't know why it didn't. Please ensure each annotated comment begins with a verb that ends in ing. Okay. All right, are you gonna, there we go. I corrected it this time. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and accept that. And so that's my code. So that is a very simple GitHub code space. So that is really it. I mean, we could end the stream here right now if we wanted to. But let's show you a little bit more. So what we did here is we just started up like a brand new code space from like blank. So I want to show a couple more things before we get out of here though. So by default, you'll notice that we have created this GitHub code space with 2 cores, two CPU cores, 8 gigabytes of RAM, and then I'm not sure what this 32 is here, like if it's storage or like, because I don't know what the 1.4 versus the 32 is here. But basically, this is the lowest instance that you can get. And I'm trying to remember what the GitHub code space here. Let's actually check out what the quota is. Code spaces quota. Okay. All right. So if we come down here, and okay, so here we go. So if you have a free account, a GitHub free account, so this is if you just signed up and you didn't pay for GitHub Pro, then you would get 120 hours of coding a month, which is quite substantial. Like if you're just a hobbyist coder or you're just a learner, this is probably going to be more than sufficient for you. I will tell you it's more than sufficient for me. But even so, if you like go beyond the 120 hours, you can still pay for extra, and I think it's somewhere in here. Yeah, there we go. 18 cents an hour is for the standard one. But you can see, let's look, I guess this, I'm glad we came to this table here. So you can see the different sorts of instance types and whatnot that you can use. So like I said, so the lowest instance type, that is the one that is free. And that is the one that for most people that are just like hobbyist or like just standard learners and wanted to do some basic stuff, that's probably going to be good enough for you. Like I said, it's good enough for me for most of my work. But if you wanted to, you could increase the code space instance type. You're just going to be paying a little bit more potentially. So you can see that we got $2.88 here for a 32 core machine, which yeah, that's a pretty beefy CPU instance type. I'm not sure if it has GPU instances, but we're not going to worry about that. And so, all right, so let's show a couple other things here. So let's say I want to. I've got my GitHub repository already, so I already got all my code somewhere, and I want to take that code from the GitHub repository and start getting to work on it immediately within one of these code spaces. Well, so what I can do is I can go to my repositories. Let's pull open this one. So this is our LLM rag guide. This is the one that we've been working through the last couple days. I'm sorry, not last couple days, last couple months. And so you can see here we got this code button right over here. Here, let me get my Mac cursor out of the way again. We have this code button right here, and then you can see that we can clone it down with these other ones. I thought there was a button. Oh yeah, there is. So here's code spaces right here. So we can actually say So don't worry too much about what it says here about the main. So like that's referring to the main branch if you're not familiar with that nomenclature. But we can just tap that here, and that's going to set up my code space here with everything that I need. Now I actually, I'm going to show a little bit of an advanced thing, because this is going to take a little bit to set up because I do have some customization on this. The really cool thing, all right, so this is going to be an advanced feature. So if you're a newer learner out there, bear with me for a second. Some of the advanced, some of the developers out there, if you're a software engineer or whatnot, are going to be interested in this. So you'll notice in here that I actually have a new file or a new directory in here called .dev container. And so if I open .dev container, you'll notice I have a dev container.json file. And so within this file here is actually basically like what I want, how I want the code space to be set up. And so what I'm saying here is, okay, this is the name of my GitHub Codespace setup. On line 2 here. On line 3 here is the actual Docker image that we want to base this off of. So you can see this is just like a standard Python 3.11 Docker image. And then you can see whenever it actually creates the code space for the first time, then I'm doing my pip install. So if you are not familiar with what a pip install is, that is when you are installing additional libraries that you want to use on within Python. The way I like to describe it is, imagine that you buy an iPhone or an Android phone for the very first time. Generally speaking, you power the thing up, it's going to have a couple of standard apps on there. You're going to have your phone app, you're going to have a music app, you're going to have other apps, but you're going to want to download other apps, third-party apps from the App Store to really enhance the experience on your iPhone or your Android phone. So for example, you might download the TikTok app or the Facebook app or something like that. That's the idea with Python libraries. Is so with Python, you get the standard core functionality, but if you wanted to add some of these additional things, so like things like LangChain or the OpenAI things, we would download those from a package index known as PyPy. So that stands for Python Package Index, and that's what pip is for. So we use pip to install what we want. So you can see that I actually do have another file over here then in my dependencies. So this is our requirements file, and you can see that I'm installing all of these things onto this GitHub code space right now over there. Now I don't have any of these version pinned, which is bad on me. Don't do that. Version pin your stuff. But yeah, so okay, so is this my GitHub code space? So you can see if you do some of this additional setup kind of stuff, it does take a little bit longer to get going, but it's not much longer. So it's actually, it looks like it might be good to go. So you can see here then, if like this is all the code that we've been working on through the live stream. So like if I went into, so like our previous live stream was this RAG advanced ingestion. So if I load this up here, I should be able to very simply load all these things up just fine. All right, so, or be able to operate in this code just fine. And then I'm going to show a couple of other cool little bits. Okay, so I'm going to collapse that. I'm going to collapse this. Give me plenty of space to work with. Why is this not recognizing my thing? Okay. Maybe I did something incorrectly here on the setup. Python environments. Okay, never mind. It was just being slow. So, okay, yeah. So let's go ahead and now this should start highlighting up with the syntax colors correctly, I hope. Oh, I see. If you could see in the bottom right there, it's still kind of loading some things, so we'll give it a second. Yeah, so it's downloading Jupyter. Jupyter being the source of our Jupyter notebook kind of thing. I'm going to take a sip of my drink. So I went to Potbelly for lunch today, and I had a BLTA. So that's like a standard BLT with avocado. And holy smokes, that thing was freaking good. I went with my wife over lunch, and like I told her like genuinely like I kind of want to come back for dinner, especially because we saw a sign that's like, okay, if you bring your kid, then you can get if you spend like an adult entree, then you get a kid entree for free, and so that works out since we have 2 daughters and whatever. All right, so I was stalling for time while that was continuing to load. It looks like this might actually be loaded now. So yeah, you can see that we're just running these things appropriately. So doing our imports here. It might take a second or two just because, again, this is the first time I'm firing up this particular GitHub Codespace. Uh-oh. Oh, well, that's not a big deal anyway. What I wanted to show was, here, let me actually just create a brand new cell here. So I'm going to say chat model equals chat OpenAI, chat model dot invoke. What is the capital? France. I'll just stick with that. Okay, so you can see here that the capital of France is Paris. Now, the one thing that we're going to show here in a second is you'll notice I did not pass in an API key here. Where did the API key come from? So we will show that here in a second. But I guess so. Coming back here, basically, this is what I am so thrilled about this particular setup. I think it's so cool that you can do all of this, and like basically the barrier to entry is gone. Like well, I guess you do still have to have some sort of like connection to the internet, but like you don't have to have a fancy computer. You don't have to have a MacBook. You don't have to have a Windows machine. I know a lot of high schoolers, they particularly work on Chromebooks, and Chromebooks are not really great for coding either. You could do all of this here. So, all right, let's go ahead and get out of this code space, and let's go ahead and show a couple more things. Now, by default, what happens here, I'm going to go ahead and delete this code space. So you'll notice that that is showing active here. So what happens here is that by default, it will go to inactive status after 30 minutes, and we can actually alter that if we so choose. And then within this like little 3 dots thing here, so we can actually go ahead and stop it ourselves. I'm going to go ahead and stop it myself. And like I said, don't worry too much about like these weird names. Like I don't know if you can change those or not, but these are like default names or random default names that like GitHub assigns to the GitHub Codespaces anytime it's assigned. But you can even see right above it that this GitHub Codespace is all about my LLM RAG guide that we've been covering. All right, so I already shut that down. But if I wanted to change like the instance type or whatnot, then I can do that here. So you do actually get, okay, so I didn't really mentioned this before, but like, so you actually do get like a free tier of the 4 core as well, but I think you only get like 60 hours of that. And like I said, for most people that are just like doing hobbyist sorts of things or just basic learning, you're going to be fine with the 2 core. I am fine with the 2 core. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this out. All right. So now we're going to start getting into a little bit more of advanced things. Well, actually, you know what? Not yet. There is something else I want to show. So if you want to check on your quota of how things are going, what you want to do here is you want to go to the top right, wherever your like the profile stuff is here. And then we'll go to settings. Yes, settings here. Okay, so we have my settings are here. And so if I wanted to check out like my quotas and stuff, so if I go over here on the left to billing and plans, then I can look at my plans and usage here. So you can see like I am paying for GitHub Pro. There is no particular benefit in paying for GitHub Pro. I do get, so this, like I said, the standard compute hours is 120 a month. I do get 180, but even I don't go as high, like I'm not going to use 100 coding hours per month because I do most of my coding work at work, and I get my MacBook for work, and yeah, so I don't need GitHub Codespaces. So you could see here, like I said, if you do want to use GitHub Copilot, and GitHub Copilot is really cool. So we demonstrated how it could annotate code. We demonstrated how it could write code for us. We didn't show how it could do some other things, but there are other things that we could do with it. This is the one thing that is paid. Like, so there is a free tier, or I'm sorry, I keep saying free tier, free trial for 30 days. You can see I'm still on my own free trial right now. But after the free trial, it's $10 a month, which is pretty affordable, I think. And then if you want to see your actual usage hours, so that's when we come down to here. And so you can see that, okay, here's our GitHub Codespaces. And then if we toggle this open, you can see that I've used 5.36 hours. I've used 5.36 hours this month. And then, so that is where you can check to see what your quota is at. All right, so let's go back into up here so you can see All right, let me zoom up. So we're back at the top here. So if you want to change some settings on your Codespaces, so we can just go over here to the Codespaces settings. So Codespaces, and a lot of these you're not going to care about. Oh my gosh, it's doing that thing again. All right, there we go. Okay, so I guess the one thing I want to highlight here for at least you standard, like if you're coming to this new and you're kind of you want to be careful about like your timeout. So I mentioned that the idle timeout by default is 30 minutes. I've knocked mine down to 20 minutes. So basically, if I walk away for 20 minutes, then my GitHub Codespace is going to go into an idle status, and then I'm going to have to start things back up. But I'm okay with that because, so you can see you could crank this up as high as 4 hours, but that's a bad idea. Just because, like, let's say I'm working and I go away for the day, then I just use 4 hours of quota time for nothing. So not ideal. But there's some other things that you can change in here. But I think for most people, like if you are brand new and you're just wanting like a place to play around with, you probably don't even need to fiddle with any of these settings at all. So let's get into one of the more advanced things here. And I'll try to explain it in case you're newer, so like you can understand it in case you're interested. So like I said, like whenever we were interacting with the ChatGPT API there, I noted that I did not pop in an API key. And why is that? And the reason that is because you can actually manage your API keys as secrets right here. So you can see here that I have put in my own OpenAI API key here. And the way that it gets loaded into the GitHub Codespace is as an environment variable. So if you're not familiar with what an environment variable is imagine that like you're working amongst a couple different computers. Maybe you're working on a MacBook one day, and then you're working on a GitHub Codespace the another day. An environment variable is really like something that kind of tells you, okay, here's the sort of environment that you're working in, and here are the different things that you can associate to it. So there are generally like several standard default environment variables out there, but you can also set your own. And so that's what's happening here is anytime you create a secret within this GitHub Codespaces settings little space, then it will pop it in automatically to your GitHub Codespace as an environment variable. So in order to use like the ChatGPT, like the API there, one of the ways that you can do that is having an environment variable set as OpenAI _API _key, just like this, and that's how it was able to work. You didn't see it, but what was going on behind the scenes is GitHub Codespace is loaded in my API as an environment variable, and I was already good to go. And then the nice thing here you can also see is, like, let's say, so I can come in here and note, like, okay, I want just these particular repositories to have access to this particular key. So if for whatever reason you wanted just limited access from these things, that's how you can do that here. So again, that's probably a little bit of a more advanced feature for if you're brand new. But like I said, if you're brand new, I actually kind of more so recommend the Kaggle notebooks, just because they are really, really easy to get up and going with. I'm trying to see what else in here that I want to cover. So I actually think that I pretty much did cover everything along the way. I guess coming back here, I do want to highlight this one piece again. What's the one piece? Yeah, so I wanted to highlight, I'm tapping around here. I should stop tapping so you can see where my cursor is going. So that, like the LLM RAG guide here, for example, this dev container thing. So you can actually do quite a bit with this. So a little bit of an advanced talk here again. So the way I understand it is it sounds to me like basically like when you initiate a GitHub Codespace, what is happening is it's spinning up a Docker container behind the scenes. And so a Docker container is basically a lightweight managed virtual environment, meaning that like it will create like a space on a piece of compute hardware out on some server somewhere with specific like a specific configuration, if you will. So there's lots of different GitHub images out there. So an image would be like how you want want to set something up on a standard basis. So you can see here that Microsoft actually offers quite a few of them, and I think you can actually use Docker images from like the standard Docker hub out there. And so you can see that I'm just using a standard one, Python 3.11. But there's actually several more settings that you can actually put within this this dev container JSON file. It's just that so I just wanted to draw attention to that really quick. So if this is a really simple version of one, but I believe like there are like GitHub has provided several examples of like how you can really customize this thing. So for me, I'm good with just a standard Python 3.11 container. And then doing the pip install with my requirements. And so I have them set in here in this .txt file, this .txt file, so that when my GitHub Codespaces launches, then it does the installation of all these packages here, which are not default packages in Python. So these are the things that we've covered as part of the other RAG series. So dang, I flew through that material. That's really all I wanted to cover today. I'll hang around for a minute to see if there's any questions. And I guess, here, I'm going to go ahead and close up my iPad. All right. So I'm going to get back into my MacBook here. So like I said, I could do basically everything that I showed you. We're now back on my local MacBook here. Let me get my iPad out of the way so I can slide my keyboard over it a little better. It's basically like, so this is all running locally on my MacBook. But it's basically the same thing. Like there's not really a huge difference here. Like, yeah, it's running on my MacBook hardware, so therefore it is faster. But I had to pay for this laptop too. So, yeah, the iPad's not perfect though. Like, just to be clear, like it is. The main reason I really like the iPad is it is I like being able to handwrite mathematical algorithms when I'm learning math with the Apple Pencil. I like to be able to read, just swipe through and read. And then, of course, if I'm not learning or anything, I would like to just be able to, kick back, watch Netflix, or read a book, or play a game. The iPad's really like a perfect device for all that. It's just a shame that Apple's not unlocked the ability to really take advantage of the hardware built in here. But it's awesome that GitHub Codespaces exist. When I discovered GitHub's Codespaces last week, I was thrilled. It was actually my birthday. Last Sunday, when I found this. So this was like a great birthday gift to me. All right. So any questions or anything? I'm not seeing anything. So hopefully this all makes sense to you. It's all pretty simple and straightforward, I hope. Yeah. Okay. I'm not seeing any questions. So we'll go ahead and call it here. Yeah, so I hope you all have a good weekend. We will get back into the RAG series. So we covered, again, advanced RAG ingestion last week. We will cover advanced retrieval within the next stream. And yeah, I don't know when we're going to do that. Maybe next week. We'll see. We'll see what sort of time I have. So